All right, we're keeping on theme today, zooming out, trying to put what the 49ers challenge in front of them is into perspective. Talk about Brock Purdy facing the 49ers defense at practice, what that means in the larger picture as they try to kick the door down and win a Super Bowl this year. This show, we can focus on Brock Purdy and the standard that he's already set in 2022 and 2023 that he has to A, live up to in 2024 and maybe B, surpass this coming season. And I would say that the early indications from training camp, we've got a slightly muscled up Brock Purdy. It seems that over the first few practices, we've seen somebody who's truly in command of the 49ers offense. We've heard some of Brock Purdy talking. I mean, that's been fascinating. Mike Silver, we're going to have him on the show a little bit later this week, but Brock Purdy came out and said that he wants to be dominant in 2024. The gloves are off when it comes to how Brock Purdy interviews. In 2022 and 2023, he was just making sure to say the neutral thing. Wasn't going up there and saying anything particularly bombastic. Here in 2024, if the initial interview with Mike Silver is any indication, Brock Purdy is speaking a little bit more ambitiously, talking about how he wants to put opponents away by the third quarter. That was another one of those quotes. Anyway, the standard is the standard, and the standard is very good. It was set in 2022 and 2023. This EPA, expected points added per play, has been tracked by I don't think Pro Football Focus does EPA, but Ben Baldwin's website tracks EPA. ESPN has their division that tracks EPA. True Media tracks EPA. It is the standard of efficiency measurement in football. Then Aaron Schatz's DVOA, which is similar to EPA, but DVOA is based on defense adjusted value over average. So you look at the strength of defense and mix in that opponent adjustment. But anyway, as long as this kind of stuff has been tracked, and it now goes back a couple decades or even more, the second best quarterback efficiency over a QB's first 750 career snaps belongs to Brock Purdy. Number one is Patrick Mahomes. So over the past few decades at this point, that's fair to say, you've had Patrick Mahomes, who's an alien, who's ahead of every single other quarterback that they've tracked as far as efficiency to begin his career over his first 750 snaps. And then you have Brock Purdy. That's above Herbert. That's above Joe Burrow. It's above Jordan Love. Of course, it's above Jordan Love because he was struggling up until the back half of this past season. But the bottom line is that Brock Purdy has been special. The standard that he has set has been very high. And I wrote the state of the 49ers quarterback position, and with Matt Barrows, this was last month. So this was just over a month ago on June 25th. You can see the date there. It's the Athletic article. You can check this out. I'm going to have Mike toss this into the description because some of the graphics that I'm going to share here, you can peruse in much greater detail. I'm sending that over to Mike right now. So that's something that you're going to be able to check. I want to go through some of the numbers and some of the plot points on the charts that are going to help us visualize the standard that Brock Purdy set in 2022 and 2023 that he will now shoot to eclipse in 2024. I think this is appropriate table setting for this season. So, for example, we can take a look at the adjusted net yards per attempt. And for that, I'm going to open up the master key. This is what we call the master key. This is 49ers quarterbacks throughout the entirety of the Kyle Shanahan era. I take away the text title so you could see the very bottom. Blue is good. Red is bad. So blue is above average. The darker the blue, the better it is. The darker the red, the worse it is. We go all the way back to Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017, who had a very good adjusted net yards per attempt that season, 7.6. I'll explain the stat here in a second. But look at Brock Purdy. Even though Garoppolo in 2022 also had a 7.6, Purdy in 2022 had a 7.6. Look where Purdy was all of a sudden in 2023. 9.0. Now, what adjusted net yards per attempt tell us? And I'll go back to this in a second, but I want you to focus on what I'm saying here. This is a stat that measures essentially everything that a quarterback does in raw statistics, but it puts it under one hood. So between passing yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and then yards per attempt. So it's done on an efficiency basis as well. All of that is under one hood. So your yards per attempt will be lower if you throw too many interceptions. Your adjusted net yards per attempt is going to be higher if you throw more touchdown passes, so on and so forth. It also includes sacks. And as we know now, sacks are a stat that's more correlated with quarterbacks than offensive lines. So a bad offensive line will give up a lot of pressures. That's something a quarterback can't control, but it's actually a bad quarterback who's going to get sacked a lot. Quarterbacks who are good generally are generally are able to avoid sacks. So now that you know all this and you know that it all goes under the hood of adjusted net yards per attempt, let's open it back up. Garoppolo was obviously very good in this regard back in 2017. 7.6. Trey Lance actually had a good adjusted net yards per attempt in very limited time in 2021. But you didn't see any other quarterback really approach that number that we've seen from Brock Purdy in 2023. Not even come close, really. I mean, guys are a full yard away. Everybody acknowledges that Garoppolo had a good 2022 before he got hurt. He was playing some really good football for the 49ers. Everybody says that Brock Purdy was really good when he took over from Jimmy Garoppolo after the foot fracture in 2022. And his adjusted net yards per attempt was exactly the same as Jimmy Garoppolo's in that season. But what Purdy did in 2023 absolutely blew that out of the water. 9.0 adjusted net yards per attempt. Do you want to compare to other quarterbacks? Well, I do. Let's compare to other quarterbacks. See, Purdy's already at the top in QBR. We'll get to that in a bit. Why don't we click on adjusted net yards per attempt? Look at this. This is sorting by that. Purdy at 9.0. That's just what I showed you. 9.01 to be exact. Number 2 was at 7.48. So wrap your head around this. Jimmy Garoppolo in 2022, his 7.6 would have led the league outside of Brock Purdy in 2023. The 7.6 that we saw from Purdy would have led the league in 2023. So here is Purdy at 9.0 blowing everyone out of the water in a stat that's measuring yards per attempt, touchdown passes, interceptions, and sack yards given up. That's how impressive this was. If you want to see this illustrated in more of a visual way, then we can look at the XY efficiency graph. This is not based on adjusted net yards per attempt, but it's based on other efficiency metrics that are obviously correlated to adjusted net yards per attempt. And the x-axis, I'll even take away this. The x-axis is going to tell you completion percentage above expectation. So that's an accuracy metric. And then EPA, which I talked about a little bit earlier, expected points added per plays on the Y. You want to be further to the right and further up. Look where Purdy's at right here. So when we measure 2024, when we look at what the standard's going to be this coming season, Brock Purdy has already set it immensely high based on what he did last year. The only quarterback that was in the general vicinity, maybe 2 quarterbacks in the general vicinity of Brock Purdy here during the regular season, were Dak Prescott and Josh Allen. So that's what we're dealing with. And, this graph right here, I would say that this is an efficiency versus accuracy graph. The further to the right you are, the more accurate you are based on the completion percentage above expectation. And the further up on the Y-axis you are, the more efficient you are based on the EPA per play, which is also going to factor in quarterback runs. And we know that Brock Purdy was really good at that. So that's how I wanted to set the table here. The standard is absurd already at this point. You can go to some of those adjusted yards per attempt numbers, and you have to go back to the best seasons of Aaron Rodgers, the best season of Peyton Manning, the best season of Matt Ryan, which was under Kyle Shanahan in 2016, to find comparable statistics. That's how good Brock Purdy's season was when it came to some of those efficiency standards. So what do we know now? Right now we know that Purdy opened this training camp looking physically stronger. We know that he has had a full offseason under his belt to where he's been able to obviously study the playbook, but also work with some of the concepts, at least on his own, healthy instead of focusing on rehab. We know that he is going to return essentially all of his teammates, and he's going to add Ricky Pearsall. Brandon Ayuk is not back at practice yet, but a lot of the supporting cast, most of the supporting cast that allowed Brock Purdy to operate at the high efficiency level with which he operated last year will be back. So presumably there's going to be more continuity for the 49ers. Now, one thing that we all wonder, and I think one thing that needs to be better because it's unsustainable for quarterbacks to deliver consistently with sketchy pass protection. But one thing that I think a variable that has to change and the 49ers are trying to change for the better is Brock Purdy's pass protection. And we can look at efficiency versus pass protection charts to illustrate this. You have at the bottom on the x-axis, you've got the team pass block grade. I've shown this one many times before, but it has to be included under the hood of this analysis. So further to the right means a quarterback has better pass protection. The EPA per play in terms of efficiency, which we've already seen in the prior chart, that is on the y-axis. So again, you have Purdy far and ahead of the rest of the league. His dot much further ahead of Dak Prescott's, ahead of Josh Allen's, ahead of Mahomes, ahead of Hurts. Awesome efficiency, not awesome pass protection. That's obviously not Brock Purdy's fault. And my big question is, when you look at efficiency against pass protection, where would Purdy's dot be as far as elevation here on the y-axis if his pass protection x coordinate was over here while I'm moving my cursor? Because you could see that there's a correlation, right? There's a correlation. It seems if you just go by the correlation line, the difference between this spot that I'm circling on the x-axis and this spot, slightly above average pass protection, is at least 2 rungs up the y-axis. So if Brock Purdy gets slightly above average pass protection, is he like off the chart? Is he like off the screen up here in terms of efficiency? It's a fair question to ask based on where Purdy's dot was last year as a complete and utter outlier in the NFL. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. A guy that was picked so late in the draft turn into this kind of superstar. So nobody's exactly sure what to make of it. I'm not even sure what to make of it. That's, I'm not biased. I just bring the data. I show you where Brock Purdy is on the data, or if we're covering training camp practice, I'll tell you where the interceptions happened. There were 3 of them today, how exactly they happened, and then we make our conclusions or we continue our study based on the data that we have now. We're armed with the information that is available to us at this moment. And that information includes the efficiency versus pass protection chart and includes much else, including the full chart that shows us his DVOA, which was also absurdly high, by the way, which includes the Pro Football Reference page, where the QBR for Brock Purdy puts him at the very top of the league. We've got the XY axis. This is the efficiency accuracy chart where we have Brock Purdy at the very top. All I can do is go through the actual data, show you what it looks like, and then we're ready to go for 2024. And we can talk about the Brock Purdy 2024 standard moving there. So as this season progresses, this is the kind of stuff that we're going to look at to quantify what we're seeing. Where exactly can Brock Purdy get better? It's tough because his splits were already completely torrid, on fire in the intermediate game, and his deep passing splits were also good. To open this training camp, I think he's been a little bit off with the deep ball. That's normal, though. I think at the start of camp, guys are still getting timing down. Today, he overthrew Deebo Samuel. So that's going to be something that he has to rediscover over the course of this next month. Remember that the deep ball actually started off as a little bit of a problem for Brock Purdy last year. He missed those 4 longer throws against the Rams in week 2. And then he found his stride. He actually hit 60% of his throws that traveled over 20 yards in the air, which was the highest rate on record for qualifying quarterbacks. That stat was actually tracked by PFF. So intermediate throws were awesome for Brock Purdy, efficiency-wise, that he could layer those throws really well in 2022. They were really good in 2023. He stayed at the top of the league there. But it was the deep passes that were also at the top of the league. Can he maintain that? Are there going to be some pains there trying to maintain that, trying to find the rhythm? I mean, he's overthrown a couple right now in training camp, has the extra arm strength, given something to Brock Purdy that he's going to have to adjust to, right? I mean, if he's a little bit stronger with the arm, is he going to have to take some mustard off some of these deep passes? I don't know. We're going to get to watch the journey. But I do think that the intermediate game is indispensable to how the 49ers operate. Purdy's going to have to remain extremely efficient there. I think that is his bread and butter. And I think that anybody can always work on their short game. I've seen some hiccups in the short game from Brock Purdy, even in games. We see some passes get batted down. We've seen against the Ravens, some of those bat downs turned into interceptions. He's going to have to work on commanding the pocket in ways that combat opponents' very, very researched rushing angles at this point. And we saw Brock Purdy successfully adapt in 2023 to what opponents adjusted to from 2022. Remember in 2022, he was always rolling out to his left when opponents were trying to flush him that way. Like that was the big thing. Make Brock Purdy roll out to his left. Let's see if he can flip his hips and throw downfield. In 2022, he struggled a little bit more with that type of throw when he was flushed out of the pocket. So they made him do that a lot in 2023. We saw opponents overload pass rushes from the right side, and they made Purdy move to the left. But he answered the bell because he started flipping his hips on the rollouts to the left and firing strikes downfield from that position. It started with Pittsburgh when he found, I think it was Deebo Samuel on one of the early drives in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You weren't going to be able to make Brock Purdy throw to the left and make him more efficient as you did that. That was a message that was established early in the season. So what's the next message going to be from opposing defenses, and how is Brock Purdy going to counter that message? That's going to be a big, big variable in establishing the standard of where he's going to be as far as efficiency in 2024. All right, let's talk more about Brock. I'm going to open it up to 49ers Q&A. So if you have questions about any of these numbers, adjusted net yards per attempt, the efficiency and the pass protection, the efficiency and the accuracy, please shoot them my way. It is 49ers Q&A time here on the channel. Monday night. Yeah, this is Monday Night Football without the game. I just see some people talking about it. That's funny. Trying to see where we are. We're almost at 74,000. Subscribers. So hit that subscribe button. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. I was looking through some comments and I froze up there in the middle of my sentence. All right, so let's get through some of these comments. Good questions will at least be attempted to be answered. How is Ricky's injury? It looks like Ricky's injury is finished. He was back out there today, and if he feels good tomorrow, he'll be a member of team drills as well. So Ricky Pearsall has overcome his hamstring injury, and we'll get to see him in team drills to see how well he could separate against press man coverage, because I think that is a big deal for Ricky Pearsall. Receiver, one of the questions coming out of college was that, is he a little slight of frame? Is this somebody that's going to be able to beat that press man at the NFL level? Well, we shall soon find out about Ricky Pearsall. Training camp, I think, is going to tell us a lot about what he can do as a wide receiver in the NFL. How can Purdy be dominant in 2024 compared to 2023? Well, I think he was already dominant in many ways in 2023, so I think that's a good question. How can he be even better than the very upper right of this graph? And to answer that question, you move further to the right and you move further up. I think that the efficiency can improve for Brock Purdy if the pass protection improves for the 49ers. Because as fun as running around and making plays is, the Kyle Shanahan offense is good at getting receivers open. They've got good receivers who can get open. And if you give Brock Purdy a better pass protection composite grade, move that dot further to the right, the correlation on this chart suggests that his y-axis efficiency would move up, which would mean that he would be more dominant. I think it's very, very possible for Brock Purdy to be better if the pass protection does get better. And, then you also look at just his natural growth as a quarterback. There could have been times when he missed some open receivers last year. We've looked at some of that tape. You would hope that gradually improves over time is because becomes more well versed in Kyle Shanahan's offense and as he becomes more connected to the receivers and his teammates with more reps. I think everybody's excited to see what Ricky Pearsall will bring to the table. We know that he's a smooth operator. He moves smoothly. I want to see how physical he can be at the NFL level. So it's exciting that he's back and that pads are now on. What do they sell the mission style burritos you have mentioned before? Well, mission style burrito means Mission District in San Francisco. So I would come up to the Mission District, even if you're down in Santa Clara, drive up at night, 40-minute drive. The Mission's on the southern side of the city. So it's actually easier to get to than Fisherman's Wharf, North Beach, the marina. Have to cross the city coming up from the peninsula and go to Taqueria Cancun at 19th and Mission. Actually did dinner there tonight with my friend Joe. I don't know if I'm going to have any food videos for you on this video. I had a great little breakfast sandwich this morning, but I think I'm going to save it for a show tomorrow. Bo Adams says Montana would bark at receivers. Young would bark at receivers. Purdy is now barking at receivers. Look out, NFL. I was barking at Debo the other day. I mean, there's a couple things that have to happen for you to legitimately bark at receivers. A, you have to develop the respect amongst your receivers to be able to be a little bit of a jerk on the field. You can't walk in as a third stringer who hasn't done anything in the league and start yelling at all pros for doing stuff wrong and expect to be treated seriously. You have to establish that respect, and you do so by leadership through action. You lead by doing. Purdy has done a lot. I mean, I've shown you all the stats here over the course of the past 20 minutes. So he's done a ton in that regard for the 49ers. You lead by action out there on the football field. But two, you also have to develop a solid enough command of the playbook and of the intricacies of what everybody's supposed to be doing, not just what you're supposed to be doing as a quarterback, but the details of what the receivers are doing. You have to have such a high cerebral command of what's happening on the field to where you have the confidence to step in and correct somebody. You have to be a true field general to be able to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, that Mike Silver talked about it in his article. He asked Brock Purdy about it the other day. We saw it on the practice field the other day when he corrected Deebo Samuel on the field. That is the kind of stuff that you want your franchise quarterback field general to do, but they have to earn the ability to do it. And I think Purdy has over the past season and a half. As David says here, David Marazzo, Brock's play has earned him the respect. Yes. You heard nothing about Mordecai. Any news? No, there's no news. What's happening right now in the 49ers quarterback room is that Purdy's knocking off season rust off, and Tanner Mordecai is at quarterback number 4, while Josh Dobbs and Brandon Allen get all the second and third team reps. They're splitting the reps to see who's going to be the number 2. Mordecai's work is happening behind the scenes, so there's not going to be any update on Tanner Mordecai. I will give you a 49ers quarterback update, though, that I think you've only heard on this channel. The 49ers did work out a quarterback a few days ago. They're not signing him right now. His name is Josh Love, played for San Jose State, was playing in the USFL and the UFL most recently. And I think his workout went well, and I think that's somebody that they have in the Rolodex now in case they need a quarterback at some point. You never know how things are going to work around the roster cut down. And, if they cut somebody, if he gets poached by somebody else, you don't know how many they're going to want to have in the building. They may want to upgrade over somebody at that time as well. That's why, and then somebody could get hurt at any point during the regular season. That's why you constantly have quarterbacks ready on speed dial to bring in. And I think that Josh Love, the San Jose State product, is now on that speed dial list for the 49ers. Do I think the amount of pressure Brock was under last year played in the decision to bulk up? Indirectly, I think that any quarterback in the NFL realizes that there are pass rushers coming in, they're hunting for him, right? The NFL is a brutal life, and I don't care about the rules that have protected quarterbacks more now. Okay, it's all great; those are in place. It's still not fun to get tackled or hit by a 300 plus pound defensive lineman or defensive lineman who weighs 240 but is running a 4.40. It's an inherently violent situation that you need to build your body to withstand. So Brock Purdy putting on some of the weight, regardless of whether or not he's got good protection by the metrics, I think it's important to build your body to be as durable as possible. That's just what you do in the NFL. Tom Brady was famous for working out in these off seasons with his TB12 formula that would get him ready to be as flexible as possible during the season so he could withstand all these hits. So I think flexibility was huge for Brady. That was his ticket towards staying available. Flexibility is really important for Brock Purdy as well, but one of his calling cards are his baby Bosa thighs. That's what Kyle Shanahan's calling them. He's got one of the strongest bases in the league. I'd put it up there with Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. Those are guys with really strong bases in the NFL. There's one more quarterback that I think I'm blanking out on that's got a really strong base, but there are four that are extremely, extremely strong in the lower body. Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's the other one of the four, with Brock Purdy being one of that foursome. And that is his calling card. So he's worked to make the base even stronger. Now he needs to obviously moderate things. You can't just turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger over the offseason, because I'm sure Arnold wasn't the greatest thrower of the football. You've got to be able to have some torque when you throw the football with your arm, right? And you look at a pitcher in baseball, there's got to be some elbow flexibility involved. You can't just beef up and turn into a 250-pound quarterback, because it wouldn't work. So there's a balancing act that Brock Purdy is trying to play, but ultimately everybody's trying to make their body a little bit more durable so they could withstand the hits and the rigor of the NFL. Bo Adams thinks Guerrero is going to be special. That might be the case, but you're going to have to wait a little while for Isaac Guerrero. He currently has a hamstring strain, and he's going to be out a few weeks, according to Kyle Shanahan. Jarrett Kingston is with the second and the third team. It's interesting. The lineman, Kingston, who they picked in I want to say the sixth round. It was the sixth round of the draft. He's played both guard and right tackle for the 49ers this offseason. Now, they might just need a body at right tackle for that second, third team. But I was under the impression that he was going to be a guard at the NFL level. Last year, though, they played Il Manning out at tackle because they needed a body there. So we shouldn't read too much into it. But it's been interesting that Jared Kingston has been getting some cross-positional work. Bo Adams has a lot of good points today. If you have good points like Bo, then I'll probably put them up on the screen. It says QBs and pitchers generate power from the ground up. That's right. So you want your base to be strong. But their base also has to be well timed. There's choreography with the footwork to be able to translate the strength that your base is generating into the upper body. And to me, it definitely seems that Brock Purdy's throwing with more zip. He was out there at Jacksonville working with Tom Gormelli, sports science kind of guy with the throwing physics and the throwing mechanics, and Will Hewlett, who's the quarterback's coach. They got him right over the course of that month, and I think it's been apparent watching him at 49ers training camp that he is throwing harder than he was in the past. As JT says, it's about transferring the weight from your back foot to your lead foot. Yes, that is an appropriate characterization of what is happening. Waiting for a couple more good questions. Let's go. Everyone worried about the rookies and the rosters. I'm dying to see what Kyle Shanahan cooks up for Brock and company with the full off season. And you're exactly right. We have a long ways away from actually knowing what they're cooking up. They're working on stuff right now, really behind the scenes, even in training camp. Even if you got fans watching the practices, they're in the film room. They're there for so many more hours of the day than we can all watch. And last year, the result obviously was beautiful from the 49ers. Number one offense in the league, Purdy topping all those charts. It was truly special stuff. I mean, we could look at it one more time. I think it's worth it when you look to see what the 49ers were able to do with their quarterback last year. So far and ahead of everybody, despite the fact that the pass protection was worse than a lot of teams. You look at all of the stats, the completion percentage above expectation, the success rate, the DVOA, the adjusted net yards per attempt, top of the line, top of the league. Now, one area of light red here, turnover EPA per game. That's from the interceptions last year. That's from some of the giveaways from Brock Purdy. Somebody asked me earlier, what can he do to be even more elite? I think you could up the efficiency if you cut down on the turnovers. Let's look to see what Brock Purdy's interception rate was last season. 2.5%. Where did that rank him? Down at number 26. So Brock Purdy actually threw quite a few interceptions relative to the rest of the league. So can he cut down on that INT rate? Maybe bring it in to what? Around 1.9%? It's a couple fewer interceptions. If you throw a couple fewer interceptions, the adjusted net yards per attempt will go up. The DVOA will go up. Everything will go up. The success rate will go up. So the one way for Brock Purdy to become even more dominant than he was last season, all the way here in the upper right, is to cut down on some of those interceptions. And I think Peyton Manning had a high interception rate, very high over his first couple years. So we know what happened with Peyton Manning. He cut the interception rate with more experience, and all ended up fine. All right, that's it for me tonight. It's been fun. Hopefully we set the standard, set the parameters for Brock Purdy. The 2024 standard for him after setting it so high already in 2022 and 2023. Everybody take care.